Dear God, thank you so much for this day. Like the song says, Heavenly Father, I really pray that we can, in a sense, turn back the time so that we're back at the time of your creation when we're with you every day and when we can hear you and feel your love for us, and also that you can feel our love for you as well. And I pray that every Sunday we can come closer to that ideal and that we can grow to love each other more and to feel you more and just to come all around closer to you. Thank you, and I pray this in Jesus' name, Los Santos family. Okay, I'd like to, well, actually,
Yesterday we were at Christy's baby shower, so congratulations to Christy for the baby girl coming. So that was exciting. Daniel, that might be a little bit too loud. So my talk this morning is called "With Great Blessing Comes Great Responsibility." So when I take this phrase, "with great blessing comes great responsibility," I break it down into three main groups. And it's really just coming to understand, I think, what this quote means, but not only that, but I think I see it a little bit differently than maybe a lot of people see it, and I just wanted to share that with everyone here today. So the first thing is, with great blessings, we have to understand, first we have to recognize what are blessings in our life, and we have to recognize our blessings in our life. Because I believe everybody here is tremendously blessed, but sometimes we have a hard time recognizing and seeing that. So to start off, I'm actually going to start with the story of Moses. Next slide. So we can see an example in the Bible with the story of Moses. This was taking place in Egypt, and it's a time during the Hebrews and the Israelites. And at this time, the Israelites were growing rapidly, and so a lot of times when the slaves in an area, if they're growing too large, it becomes a threat to the people in the government. So the Pharaoh at that time, his name was Ramses, and he decided to start killing all the baby boys that were born so that they would feel less threatened. Well, one Israelite gave birth to a baby boy and kept it hidden for a few months. But after she couldn't keep it hidden any longer or keep it a secret, she built a reed basket and then sent this baby down the Nile River. And then this basket came across the Pharaoh's palace. At the time, the Pharaoh's daughter and her slaves were outside in the Nile. The Pharaoh's daughter told the slave to go check what that basket was, and when they brought the basket to her, the slave said, "Oh, I think this is a Hebrew baby," which was basically like the same people, like the royalty. They didn't know it was an Israelite. Maybe the slave did, but she didn't say it. She said, "Oh, I think it's a Hebrew." And so the Pharaoh's daughter, she said, "Okay, well, let's take it in because I feel bad for this baby." And they named it Moses. So Moses actually grew up in the palace being treated like royalty as the son of the Pharaoh. Isn't that a blessing, right? Because Moses, he could have had two things happen to him. Either he could have been killed as an Israelite, but he didn't. And even if he wasn't killed and he was able to live, he could have been a slave at most, right? But instead, he grew up as the son of the Pharaoh and lived a very comfortable life. I mean, what more can you ask for in that situation, in that living, right? So we can see that Moses was actually tremendously blessed, but maybe he couldn't see it because he didn't see what life he could have had. Maybe if he doesn't know who he was. Maybe to him, it just looked like a normal life. And I think, maybe next slide. I think that's something that we can see with our own lives today, right? We could have been born in a third world country, or maybe we could have lived in an oppressed government, or we could have grew up in a different time era. But no, we're living in one of the greatest countries, and we're growing up in a place where the government allows freedom for each individual. And we live in a safe community, in a safe environment. And I think it's sometimes hard to not really see our blessings, but I think if we look at it from a different perspective, I think, yes, we are tremendously blessed, right? We have technology. Cooney was walking around all morning going, "Okay, Google," on his phone, and the screen will pop up, and it'll ask him, "Oh, Cooney, what do you need?" Like the technology will ask him, right? So we're blessed with technology, and we have free education, comfortable bed to sleep in at night, supportive community here. So, and also one of the greatest gifts, we all understand and recognize who our Heavenly Parent is, and I think that's a tremendous blessing in itself too. So there's a quote I want to read. "It dawned on me that liberation was the ability to remain grateful for everything, for every and anything God allows us to experience, whether or not we judge it as good or bad. To fully and unconditionally accept it, all the good and all the bad, is ultimately what makes life life. It is the range of emotions, thought, sentiment, will, tribulation, trials, effort, experience, sadness, happiness, grief, anger, contentment, depression, compassion, forgiveness, suffering, joy, love, bliss, and so on that enriches life and makes life life. Next quote. Our lives are filled with wonderful, rich blessings if we are willing to pay attention to the moment here and now. Our lives are filled with moments that are more wondrous than wonder itself and all the synonyms combined, if we pay attention, right? So the key is we have to pay attention to our moments, and we have to pay attention to what our blessings are. So once we are first open to receiving God's love and God's blessing, something he talked about last week, right? Being open to receiving God's love and God's blessing, and understanding and recognizing that I am blessed, then after that, the next thing we have to do is we have to thank our Heavenly Parent for our blessings, because ultimately our blessings are coming from him. So there's a story. Okay, you can go next slide, and then click just once. Okay, so the $100 million story. It's from The Bald Head and the Strawberry, so if you guys have read that book, you probably already know the story, but for some of you, it might be new. So the question is, would you like to have $100 million? I know I would like to have $100 million. Right? It would give you financial freedom, security and protection. You can devote yourself more fully to helping others, right? You can stop working, get the car, house you've always wanted, the new and latest technology. So you can do a lot of things with $100 million. What if I told you I can give you $100 million today, but you just have to do one thing? Do you want just one small thing? Do you guys want to know what that one thing is? Okay, so all you have to do is just hold your breath for 60 minutes. So at the end of the 60 minutes, in one hand I'll have $100 million, in the other hand I'll have air to breathe. Can you press the next slide? In that moment, which are you going to choose? The $100 million or the air? Air. Right? So everybody, so this is Hyungjin speaking actually, so he says, everybody I've asked this question to told me that they would choose to breathe. But why? Didn't you ask for the $100 million? What is admitted is that one breath of air is worth more than $100 million. Each breath of air is a gift and a divine blessing that we normally are so ignorant of. What is the first thing we do when we enter the world? We breathe in. And what is the last thing we do before death? We breathe out. So ultimately, it is God who is giving us our blessings. And something so fundamental, something so precious and so valuable, such as air, is often taken for granted. So the first thing we have to do is offer gratitude towards God, because without God, then we have nothing. And this brings me to my third point. You can go to the next slide, maybe. Okay, just stop there. So I'm going to return back to the story of Moses. So I got this excerpt out of the Bible from Exodus 2:11 to 2:12. One day after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating an Israelite, one of his own people. Glancing this way and that and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So after that, the Hebrews found out about this, and they told the Pharaoh, Ramses, "Oh, Ramses, Moses killed one of the Hebrews." And so as a Pharaoh, he had no choice but decided that he must kill Moses. But before Moses was killed, he escaped to Midian, and in Midian, Moses met God at a burning bush. Next slide, or next picture. The Lord said, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up into the land of good and spacious land, a land flowing of milk and honey. And now the cry of Israelites have reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people out of Egypt." So the story continues on, and after a lot of hardship and plagues happening in Egypt, Moses successfully escorts the Israelites out of Egypt. But looking back at this story, when God first asked him of this great task, that's a great responsibility, right? Go back to the people who tried to kill you and go save the people in Israelite, the people who probably are jealous of you for getting the good life your whole life, and then coming. So maybe they don't even want Moses' help, but God is asking him to go back to this place. So this is actually a really difficult task, and this is a great responsibility. And so put yourself in Moses' shoes. If you just escaped from this place after almost being killed, and then God asked you, met God at a burning bush and God asked you, oh, can you go back to that place and save all the people there and have absolute faith in me? That's a difficult task. So I'm going to kind of go into the word responsibility first. Sometimes when we think of the word responsibility, all of a sudden we think of the word like burden or I'm responsible for this, right? Let's say you're at home with your spouse and you say, well, I'm going to be gone for a few hours. You're responsible for the kids. What does that mean? You have to watch them, right? You're responsible. Or if you're like an older brother, or like if you're with your siblings and your younger sibling does something wrong, and then you were with your younger sibling, and the parent says, it's your fault. And you say, why? I didn't do anything. And the parent says, you're responsible for your younger sibling, like your younger sister, your younger brother. So sometimes with the word responsibility, we think of like something we're being forced to do. Or maybe something most people can relate to is maybe being a team leader for a fundraising team. I don't know. Most of you guys have probably experienced that. But when you're responsible for team members, you're responsible for many things, right? Their spiritual life, their guidance, and you have to make sure that they're okay physically, that they're safe. Every time I had a team, probably I was constantly worried about them, and I really felt like a huge weight was on me, and a lot of pressure of taking care of people, right? So sometimes when I hear of the word responsibility, I always consider it maybe something I'm almost being forced to do, right? Like with great blessing, you're forced to have, it comes with a responsibility. So going back to the story of Moses, probably for the last time, during his encounter with God, he was given this responsibility to free the slaves from Egypt. And Moses really could have looked at this responsibility in two ways. He could have looked at it like, wow, that's a burden. I just barely escaped, but now you want me to go back to the people who tried to kill me twice and risk my life again? He could have looked at it that way, or he could have looked at it, wow, God has given me tremendous blessing in my life. He saved my life twice, and he's given me such a blessed life. And now he wants me to share this blessing of freedom with the rest of his children in Israel. Wow, I feel honored. God trusts me with such a task. Usually with responsibility, it can really be seen in two different ways. Right? One viewpoint is really self-centered, and the other viewpoint is really God-centered. And the one is really looking at it as a burden, but the other one's looking at it like an honor. And in one way, you can feel like very forced to do something, or you can look at it as an opportunity. So I think I want to change the word, or the phrase. And I think when we receive tasks or we receive blessings, we should feel, wow, God trusts me. He trusts my choice and he trusts my decisions. Because when God first created us, God gave us free will. And God gave us free will and he gave us freedom. Why? Because he wanted children who can love him unconditionally and not by force, but by choice. And he wanted us to become great people by choice. Because that's what brings parents joy. Not a kid who's forced to do everything, but a kid who offers everything up to their parents joyfully and with their own decision. So going back to being a team leader on a fundraising team, I'm just going to talk about one of my personal experiences. Well, usually on GPA you have like 1 year, and then you have a choice to make whether you want to stay for a second year or be a team leader. Well, that was a big decision for me. I didn't know if I wanted to stay for another year, because I think the first year was hard enough. But I don't know how a lot of you guys have done it for 7 years. I have a lot of respect for you. So, and I was trying to decide whether I wanted to do a second year or not. A lot of my friends were saying, hey, I'm doing it, so you should do it. Or, oh, you make such a great team leader. You're so nice. Your team's going to love you. Right? They try to flatter you, and you think, yeah, maybe it won't be so bad. So ultimately, whether it was peer pressure or not, I decided to stay for a second year. And at one point in the year, man, you should ask my mom. I probably called every week crying, Mom, I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to go home. Yeah, well, 2/3 of the year was over, and I thought to myself, I can't do this anymore. I'm going home. And I actually, I was gonna call my mom and then say, Mom, buy me a plane ticket. I'm in New York right now. And I thought to myself, okay, if she answers the phone, it's a sign that I can go home. If they don't answer, it's a sign for me to stay and push through. Well, she didn't answer, and I ended up calling my older brother, Josh. And I said, Josh, what should I do? man, I kind of want to just go home now. I'm ready to give up. And Josh told me, Lisa, you already made it this far, and I know that you're going to regret it later on in life, and you're going to be mad at yourself. I think you should stay. So, with that, it gave me a little bit of boost, and so I stayed. Well, we were at a workshop in Texas at that time, and my group leader, he was Russian, and I don't know if you've ever had a Russian commander, but they're dividing, and they're very strong and straightforward. So I asked him, look, I really don't think I can lead a team. For me, it was just too much responsibility, and for me, it just felt like a burden and a lot of pressure. So I was talking to him and asked him, can you make me an assistant? Like, I'm willing to be an assistant to help out, and I'll go fundraising every day with the team. I'm willing to do that. And for the longest time, he told me no, like, you're fine, you can do it. Finally, after 6 hours, he he said, because I was crying at that point, like, really, please, I want to be an assistant. And then he said, okay, fine, I'll let you be an assistant. So I was happy for a few days, right? Kind of felt relieved of what I considered a burden. Like, this huge weight was lifted off of me. So I was, yes. Well, a few days later, all the team leaders were all gathered in a circle, and we were about ready to leave for our fundraising condition. And I don't know if you guys know, but GPA is divided into 3 different parts. And then everybody's favorite part is going to New York, because they're stationed in New York for a few months, and you get to learn ballroom dancing, and it was a lot of fun. Well, I remember one person in charge looks at everyone and says, I'm sorry to say, but one person who's going to New York is going to have to stay and be a team leader for a fundraising team. You should have seen the look on everybody's faces, like, everyone's like, not me. Nobody wants to give up their time in New York. In that moment, I realized, that's my fault. It's my fault that somebody has to give up their time in New York. And I saw that my choice wasn't just affecting myself, right? Maybe for a few days I was relieved of this emotional, like, pressure, emotional burden, but I saw my choice is impacting other people. And when I saw my other brother or sister having to take a responsibility because I didn't want it, I felt so bad. So I had a choice to make. Either I could have remained quiet and I could have let, somebody unwillingly take it, because someone would have stepped up eventually, or I could have, really have been strong. And so I go to my Russian team leader and I say, I want to be a team leader. And he looks at me and goes, no. And I thought, why? You wanted me to be a team leader. You tried to convince me for 6 hours to be a team leader. Now you're telling me no? Now you're telling me not to be a team leader? Like, I don't understand. And he goes, no, I don't think you actually want to be a team leader. It was so weird. I said, no, I want to be a team leader. While I was trying to convince him I wanted to be a team leader, I was convincing myself I wanted to be a team leader. And at that moment, finally, he was like, are you sure? I said yes. And he said, okay. So I accepted it, and I became a team leader, and I would say, oh, can you go to the next slide? Oh yeah, that's all the team leaders. Yeah, you don't, look how nice everybody is. You don't want somebody else taking your job. Okay, next slide. That was my team during the condition. That was probably my favorite team, and God gave me so many blessings during that time, and I really feel God was really happy, because a lot of times, right, if we say no to a responsibility, if God comes to us and he gives us a responsibility, and if we say no to it, God has to find someone else every time, right? And that's why it was so hard if you just read through the Bible, how many times God had to go to someone else, because either somebody couldn't complete their mission or someone said no, right? Because they're thinking about themselves. And I think that happens a lot, and it's not just in the Bible, but I think it happens to us every day in our lives. Right? Even if it's just helping one more person in your day, or showing kindness, or anything that you do. I think God is always, he blessed us tremendously with knowing our true parents, or knowing our heavenly parents, and in everything in our life, that we have a choice to make every day to help others.